setting up Facebook now. There we go. Okay, so I'm live on Facebook and Instagram, and I'm going to be talking today about my experience as a momtrepreneur. Oopsie, just fix that on Instagram there. And all of the mistakes that I made along the way, and all of the things that I learned that have helped me get to the point that I am now. So I'm just going to share my screen on Facebook. So if you're watching on Instagram, I do have a slide presentation ready for this this sort of chat, because my my pregnancy brain right now is pretty much zero. So I figured I'd follow along with slides so that I didn't forget some of the key points that I wanted to share. So let me just go ahead and share this here. Perfect. So on Facebook right now, you should be able to see, just double check here. Awesome. Okay, so I get people watching and I have thumbs up. Okay, excellent. Everything's working. I was a little bit worried that doing both the presentations at once would be a little bit too much for me, but hey, when in Rome. So my life as a momtrepreneur, and I'm going to be sharing some things that I never actually shared with many people before. So who is this presentation for? Who have I designed this for? Basically, any mom out there who's thinking about starting her own business. I know that especially when you go on mat leave, you toy with the idea of starting your own business, or maybe it's just something you've always thought about. That's who I've designed this presentation for, as well as anyone who's just getting started. I have a lot of friends and acquaintances who are just diving into their first business, and the amount of questions that they have are super overwhelming, because it's a crazy experience. So as well for them, plus anyone who already has a business but feels really stuck and doesn't know how to get to the next level, or really how they're going to drive more revenue. Because I know for my businesses, they started as more of a hobby, which translated into business, but I didn't make the transition particularly smoothly. So for those three folks, anyone starting off in business or who's struggling at the early stages of their business. And what I'm going to be talking about is, one, I'm going to share my personal experience. I'm going to share the full story of how I got to where I am now. And it's sort of a bit of a long one, so I'll try to summarize it as quickly as possible. And I'm going to be really open, in typical mom break fashion, about all of the struggles that I had along the way, so that I can talk about how I overcame those struggles and got to the point where I'm now running 3 very profitable businesses. And which translates into some tips that I'm going to share with you guys as well. So if you do have questions along the way, throw them in the comments below. I have all my fancy software that I can see the comments on my multiple screens, and I'll try to do my best to get to them as well. And as well, I'm very happy to share this slide presentation with anybody, and I've set up a link at the end so that I can pass those along to you as well. Okay, so you know you're in the right place if you feel overwhelmed. And this could be at any stage in your business. You may even just be starting to think about it and feel overwhelmed by it. You're confused, that you have a million different questions. You're not really sure where to start. And you feel like you're spinning a million plates at once. I know for me, I always feel like I always felt like I was juggling a million things and never actually really accomplishing anything. And more importantly, I always felt like I was dropping the ball. And I think as moms, that's one of the things that ties closely into mom guilt as well, is that I feel like I'm constantly letting someone down, no matter who it is, whether it's my husband or my daughter or my friends or my family or my day job. Something is always getting dropped, and I always feel overwhelmingly guilty. So if you feel that way, then this presentation is for you. And if you have no idea where to start or what to do. And I know all of these feelings because I have felt all of those, and I still feel them to some extent all the time. And I felt so many more emotions as well. It's just that constant heavy feeling. I think that's the best way to describe it. Constantly feeling heavy, and then I wasn't ever really accomplishing all that much. So I want to share with you guys my journey about the 5 businesses that I've started in the last 2.5 years, how I came to grow them, and how I've come to the point where now I'm feeling much better about life. So I started my first 2 businesses while I was on maternity leave, and I left maternity leave from a job in marketing, which, admittedly already set me up for success because I had that baseline skill for business, but I had no business skills. I had a very strong marketing background. I've run marketing communications teams in the high tech and the financial section for the last decade. So my marketing background is quite strong, but again, no business background. So here's a little timeline of what's happened over the last 2.5 years. And it's when I was writing it out, I was like, this is insane. I can't believe how much has happened in the last 2.5 years. So 2.5 years ago, my daughter was born, and I have been super open and candid about my struggles with postpartum depression. I had a really hard time adjusting to my new life and how my world looked after having a daughter. So I had what I sort of self-dubbed it the dark days for probably about 4 to 5 months. Things were really hard. So as a way to cope with that, I launched my first business called Breely Boutique in December 2015. And Breely Boutique was a handmade shop. So I made everything from bandana bibs, beanies, harem pants. I basically was a handmade retailer, and I sold all of these awesome things. And I started that when my daughter was 3 months old. And as I said, it was very much just a way to cope with my postpartum struggles. It was something for me. It was something that wasn't constantly yelling and crying and colicky and can't wait to do it again, by the way. T-minus 1 month. Anyways, considering I started this as a sort of a pet project, it did pretty well financially, considering I had just started my first business, and I had also just had my first child and was going through postpartum depression. So in the first 9 months, I revenued $30,000, which led me to start my second company. So I launched Fabric Crush that following summer, and it was an online fabric store. So I started this when my daughter was 9 months old, and I was still simultaneously running Mom Break at the same time. So at this point, I had a 9-month-old daughter and was running 2 businesses. And on paper, this business did really, really well. In the first 3 months of operating, I made $30,000 in revenue for this particular business. And if you're like me and you're kind of a dork with numbers, it's $120,000 a year business, which on paper is really, really good, especially when you combine it with the Breely Boutique as well. So at this point, life is getting a little bit crazy and things are going really well on paper. And I had to face the classic momtrepreneur choice of everyone who starts a business on mat leave of, holy shit, do I go back to work or not? My maternity leave ended. I'm in Canada, for those of you in the States watching. So we're really, really lucky to have a full year. And I absolutely took advantage of the full year of maternity leave. And I decided that, you know what? I am going to be an overachiever. I can do it all. I can do Breely Boutique, Fabric Crush, a full-time job, and a 1-year-old. You know what? It spoke to the state of my mind at that point that I thought it was feasible to do all of that. And that lasted like a month and a half before I crashed and burned. And if I'm being totally honest, it was a hard time. It was not easy. Objectively, I don't think anybody actually saw that, because if you're looking at it from the outside in, I'm doing all of these awesome things, and I'm in marketing. So from the outside, things look really good, and I'm making money, and I have so many loyal clients and people who are really, really nice. Excuse me, I'm just getting over a cold still. But I was exhausted. I was missing family time, which was really hard because I was having to get a babysitter for my daughter all the time. You know what? Honestly, I was fighting a lot with my husband. This took a really hard toll on him as well. And I mean, this is sort of a universal trend with moms. I had mom guilt 24/7, and it was super intense and very extreme. And again, I felt like I was failing at everything. I thought that I was doing a million things and I was doing them well, but I wasn't doing anything or excelling at anything in a great way. So I made the really hard decision to actually close Breely Boutique and Fabric Crush. So I have these 2 really profitable businesses. They're going really well, that have tons of amazing clients and customers who I really loved and I'd worked really hard to nurture. But I said, my mental health is more important. My family is more important. I need to stop because this is getting out of hand, and I haven't set this up so that I'm going to succeed. I've set up this business model and this structure so that I'm going to fail. And that was a big problem. So I was really proud of that decision. I made the mental decision to actually just stop. It didn't last very long though, because a couple months later, I launched MomBreak. And I'm the first to admit that I didn't launch MomBreak from the perspective of starting a business. It just sort of fell into a revenue generating engine. But it was started as a passion project to really help moms and share the struggles and be really honest and candid with each other about how hard this ridiculous parenting journey can be, and that you're not the only one going through it, and that's totally okay. It's okay that the other day my kid ate peanut butter out of the cap because, hey, she's eating protein. Like, it's a win. So don't feel guilty about the fact that she's literally eating peanut butter like a chipmunk out of the cap of the cap of the thing. You do what you have to do to survive. Hi, everybody on Instagram, by the way. I've seen the comments come through. I'm trying to multitask here. So MomBreak, as you guys know, because this is the business that you're following and you're watching right now, it's an online blog for moms, but I do have a lot of different revenue streams through both sponsors, affiliate links, things like that. And I've actually done a video explaining all of that. So I can link that in if you're curious about how I actually make money, because I'm very candid about it. But then because of MomBreak, a really awesome opportunity presented itself with Bytown Academy. I co-founded and launched my fourth business within 2 years, Bytown Academy, which is an online school for female entrepreneurs. So basically, I am teaching female entrepreneurs how to improve in business. And my focus is not necessarily the business side of things, but more the marketing side of things, because I've partnered up with a business coach who can support with that as well. And business coach in the picture there on Facebook is Lana. So she's a really awesome business coach, super successful in her field, and we complement each other quite well because we do very different things and we come together to create awesome advice and experience for female entrepreneurs. So, and because of all that exposure as well, I have been offered a ton of different marketing consulting gigs, which I do selectively based on my time and what makes sense for my schedule. So to sort of sum things up right now, what I'm doing is I am running MomBreak, I am running Bytown Academy, and I'm running a marketing consultancy while super duper pregnant. I always forget how pregnant I am. 32, 33 weeks. Closest to the end that I'm feeling like 1,000,000 pounds. And having with my toddler and my wonderful husband as well. I also work full time, but I try not to talk about that too much because, it's just not quite as glamorous. So now I'm doing so many different things, but I'm obviously so much happier, and I've chosen selectively to do this, what people perceive as this ridiculous load of stuff. So why have I been successful this time? It's because I approach things completely differently. And to be totally honest, I get asked this all the time, but I work less and I make more money. And as a result of that, as a result of working less and making more money, the result is pretty clear. My relationship with my husband is better. I get to spend more time with my family and he's happier. I'm making more money. I get to spend more time with my friends and family. I'm obviously a lot happier. Things are not always easy. I'm not saying that, but what is easy for anyone all the time anyways? It's just everything's relative. So what I want to do throughout the course of the rest of this sort of mini presentation is talk to you about how I actually did this. And when I really thought about it, I broke it initially into 5 ways that I make more money and do less work. There was the 1/6 way that I couldn't let go. And 6 is not a glamorous and sexy number compared to 5, but just fuck it. I don't care. So this is my 6 ways that I make more money and do less work from the perspective of a momtrepreneur. So I'm going to dive right into things and talk about number 1 right now. So number 1 is that I spend my time now compared to before doing the right things, the right activities. And just to sort of elaborate on that and give an example of that, I spend my time and energy on the things that actually make me money. And I mean, you could perceive that in two different ways. You could perceive that in a sort of money rules all, or duh, like you obviously should have been doing that the whole time. So I guess it depends on your perspective. But ultimately, I'm running businesses. I'm not running hobbies anymore. I'm running businesses which generate money and help put food on the table and, you know, pay for things like my mortgage and these pretty things that you see around. So I want to give you a really sort of basic example. If you think about your to-do list and what's on your to-do list for that particular day, I would do things in a day like organize contracts, organize my office, draft contracts, post social media stuff. And if you look at the example of organizing an office versus drafting contracts, which one is going to generate you revenue in your business? I think it goes without saying that drafting contracts, while probably not as fun as making your feng shui office that feels really good, it's not as quite as exciting, but it's going to make you money. So what I do now is pardon me, sorry, is I will always do the revenue generating activity first. And if I have time, then I do the sort of fun stuff after that isn't closely tied to revenue. And a question on Instagram, 3 Little Loves. So what businesses do I run? I run Mom Break, the blog that you're watching. I run Bytown Academy, a school for female entrepreneurs. And I do Erica Fraser Marketing. I'm a marketing consulting where I build websites, run social media accounts, basically all things marketing, to be totally honest. So how it relates to you, I want, from the perspective of choosing the right things to do, I want you to ask yourself, if you think of that big to-do list, and we all have them, like actually, I didn't think this through, but if I think of my like to-do list, everyone has their to-do list with all the things that they have to do every day, regardless of how you format it. What, from a business perspective, what tasks on that list can you stop doing? What tasks on that list won't actually make you money or aren't tied to revenue at all? And a tip that I say, and I sort of alluded to it earlier, is that when I make my list every single morning of, let's say, the 5 to 10 tasks that I'm going to be doing for that day, what I do is I actually physically go in and put a $ beside the tasks that will generate me revenue. And those are the ones that I have to do first. And if I have time for the other ones, fantastic. It feels so good to get things done off a to-do list. But if I don't have time, it's not the end of the world and I don't focus on them anymore. It's something that I can take off my plate and really just let go. Okay, so on to tip number 2 of how I make more money but actually do less work in my businesses. I've stopped, or attempted to stop. I'm not perfect at this one yet because I'm a very type A person. I stopped trying to achieve perfection. Now, the first example that came to mind with this was when I ran my very first business, Breely Boutique, where I'm making bandana bibs and beanies and pretty bows. I actually spent weeks developing the perfect bandana bib design. I'm not kidding you. I used many different types of fabric, different shapes, sizes. I made, I think, probably about 50 different prototypes of a bandana bib. There aren't that many variations of a bandana bib that you can make. I had friends try them on. I went over and got them to fill out surveys. Like, I went friggin' bonkers. When what I should have done is just bought a fucking pattern. I should have saved those weeks of energy, bought a pattern, made a few bibs, made some money, and just kicked things off. You know what? If it's not perfect the first time, that's okay. That's what iteration and growth is for. Nothing's perfect right out the bat. So that was the first example that came to mind, because I had a friggin' focus group for which bandana bibs were the best. I mean, to be fair, I still stand by the fact that they're one of the best designed bandana bibs, but I was a one-person business, a mom with very little resources, very little time, struggling with postpartum depression, which is probably in hindsight why I spent so much time really honing in on this stupid bandana bib design. But I was doing something that a huge organization or corporation would do with a ton of resources and time and money, and it just didn't make sense. So stop focusing on perfection and just focus on that 80-20 rule and just do it. If you are waiting for the perfect moment to launch your website, don't wait. Just launch it. Edit it as you go. If you're waiting for the perfect time to send that email blast, don't wait, just send it. I don't love typos, but if there is a typo in an email blast now, it is not the end of the world. People are not going to friggin' burn you at the stake. So just do it. It's better to be done than to be just sitting there on your to-do list, not done, not moving your business forward. And hey, by the way, if it's on your to-do list, it's sitting in the back of the mind with all the other million things you have to do for the family, like groceries, daycare pickup, organize this, that, Valentine's Day, like whatever, right? It just adds to the list and adds to the stress. So number 3, this isn't necessarily a business tip, but for myself and my journey personally, I found that this one was what made the difference this time around with my businesses. And that is being super brutally honest and open with the communication with my husband. So, sorry guys. So what I do now is I always say in advance, I ask specifically, or I don't ask, but in advance I say, I'm going to be busy these few weeks and I need your help. Thanks for all the Facebook comments, guys. This is really nice. Anyways, this makes me feel really good about myself. So thanks, guys. I needed this after being sick for like a week and a half. So for example, with Bytown Academy, we're launching a course next week. So I've been really, really busy. And for the next 2 weeks, I know that I'm going to be swamped. So I had that conversation with my husband and I said, look, like, I'm going to need your help with this. I won't, and to be fair, I'm also pregnant, so he's already really doing most of the work anyways. But, which is lovely, and I don't take it for granted at all. But it's important that I've had that conversation with him. I set aside a couple hours, or what I would recommend is to set aside a couple hours to talk with your significant other, spouse, or anyone who plays a role in your family dynamic, and just actually talk about how your potential business or your current business or whatever decisions you make in your business will actually change the dynamic of your family. Because to be totally honest, it's not necessarily fair to your significant other either if all of a sudden you decide to quit your day job, drop all your steady source of income, and make him do all the work, right? Or him or her, whatever. So having that conversation with my husband made all the difference in the world. So it's very clear when I need his help and with what, and he's totally okay with it, because then I can say, hey, I said, for example, this Facebook Live tonight. Hey, hun, I'm going live at Facebook at 8. After that, let's go watch a movie and let's go hang out. So he put my daughter to bed. He gave her a bath. He did all that while I threw on some makeup and tried to look fancy. And we're going to go and have some good couple time after this. So it's just a happier, better dynamic. And then because of that, you'll be able to focus more on the business and the time that you do and talk about those things. So moving on to number 4 and back to a business tip of how you can, and for those of you on Instagram who aren't watching along on the slides, we're talking specifically now about how I have made more money in my business without actually doing as much work. And that's because tip number 4 is a huge component of that, is that I don't sell to everybody. And again, back to the handmade shops, because I think that's a lot of the audience that is watching right now, based on some of the people who I know have signed up, is that you don't want to sell to bargain hunters. And you may say that there may be some people out there who disagree with me, but I think that if you're making something from scratch, you are making this awesome piece of art and something that's super valuable that you're putting your heart and soul into, and it needs to be priced appropriately, and you need to value the work that you're doing. So your people who you're trying to sell to are not people who are trying to hunt down a bargain. And to be totally honest, these aren't the clients that you want anyways. There's tons of people who are willing to admire and respect the work that you're doing and willing to pay the price that you want to charge. So the problem with this is that if you're focusing on people who aren't your ideal client or who aren't necessarily right for you, you're taking your precious time and your little time, because let's be honest, we have like micro moments of time where we get to focus on ourselves and our business. You're taking some of that time away from clients who you should be focusing on and who you should be working with. So you can't sell to everyone. And if you think of like a bigger example, if you are running a Nordstrom, you're not going to target people going to Walmart or vice versa, right? Like it's not the same audience, and that's okay. And I was kind of hesitant about sharing this example, but I think it's a really good one because when, again, my first business, when I was still struggling to learn some of these things, I underpriced my products way too much. And that's besides the point for this. But let's say I sold a bandana bib for $7. I had someone come to me and offer to buy a few extra if they wanted to pay $5. And being naive and wanting to please everybody and wanting to work with everybody who came to me because I didn't want to pass up a sale, I said yes. And that turned out horribly for so many different reasons. Not only did I completely undervalue the work that I just did and all the time and energy that I put into this, hand stitching these friggin' bandana bibs while my daughter was upstairs and I could have been spending time with her, but I actually pre-shipped the order to her as well so that she can get them in time for a baby shower because she wasn't getting paid. And guess what happened? This bargain shopper who wanted these $5 bibs, who I went out of my way to pre-ship them to without payment, never paid me. And you know what? Like, I spent all of this time and energy having back and forth conversations with her, hunting her down for the $40 she owed me. And my time, like, to hunt that many hours to get that $40 was not worth my time. I could have spent that time doing something else and something more valuable. I could have spent that time selling and finding my ideal clients who actually valued the true price of my product. And shame on me for that one, right? So all that to say is, from the perspective of you and your business, think about who your ideal client is and only do work for that ideal client. And it's always helpful. I know it's something, if you're not already doing it, it's something that's tricky to wrap your brain around and intertwine it into your daily lives. But I suggest that you always ask yourself in every single facet of your business that you're doing, is this relevant to my ideal client? So for instance, you're writing an email or you're writing a social media post, or you're trying to decide what event to go to, or you're writing copy for your website. Does this speak to my ideal client? Don't try to speak to everybody because then you're going to get nobody. Pick who that ideal client is and only speak to them. It is okay to turn things down and say no. And honestly, in the last 6 to 12 months, I've said no more in my life than I have, more in the last 6 months to a year than I have in my entire life, because I've learned that not every opportunity is right for me. And because of it, I'm doing less work and I'm making more money. So number 5, 2 tips left, is to make really great friends. And this is sort of a nice way of saying just to get out and network more. But what I'm doing now more than what I did before was I'm getting to know a lot of really great people online. And a lot of them I'm looking in the comments are people that I've had really great conversations with, who I've talked with, who I consider some of my really close friends now. And I'm not talking about sleazy networking with a end goal in mind that is designed to forward your own purpose and your own business. It's about legitimately just wanting to build genuine relationships with people. And if you're not going in with that mindset of building genuine relationships and legitimately wanting to get to know people, then you're going to piss a bunch of people off and they're going to see right through it. People are smart. They see through the BS. They see through the insincerity. So only do this if you are capable of wanting to build those genuine relationships with people, because then you have all of these fantastic friends. Now, the really cool thing about how this has actually moved my business forward is because I've spent a lot of time, as I say, making new friends online, but really others can view it as networking, is because of that, I get, not by accident, but I get a lot of really awesome referrals from people who know and respect the work that I do. They get to know the quality of work that I do and who I am as a person. So they're very happy to refer me without me asking them. And the same goes both ways. I meet these awesome group of women, whether or not it's on Mom Break in a pod and getting to know all of these awesome friends, or whether it is a networking group or Facebook group, whatever it is, I feel like I genuinely get to know these women And I'm probably a little bit more forward than most because I see them in real life and I just freak out because it's like my real life friend has sprung up in front of me that I've been talking to on social media for all this time. And because of that, that has this sort of unintentional impact onto my business. And I have this amazing support of women now online that I'm super happy to know. So I hear this all the time from people. They say, my network isn't big. I don't know a lot of people. I don't know. I'm just going to call your BS on that one, because we all have these massive networks of people that we can reach out to, who we can build relationships with and chat with. So just for instance, today, someone shared a new photographer. One of my friends who I'd met online, I've never even met in person, but I've been talking to her for a year on Instagram. So I know her entire life story at this point pretty well. Shared a new photographer friend. So naturally, because I trusted her and I respect her opinion, because of this respect that we've built up, I went and checked out this new photographer. And then guess what I did? I loved her work. I checked out her website. It was really, really good. And from the marketing perspective, I was very impressed. So I sent her a message on Instagram saying, "You're awesome. This is really good." And it came from a place of sincerity. And now we're starting up a conversation. And I didn't send her that message with any objective in mind, other than just to say, I really like what you're doing. So think about who is in your network, whether it's your mom, your dad, your friends, your brother, your sister, people who you're following, people who are watching along right now. Who can you reach out to, and how can you have a conversation with them? Now, this is tip number 6. This is the one that I couldn't cut. I really wanted to make it 5 tips because that's just such a nice, clean number. But I realized more and more, especially as I was thinking about how I got to where I am now, that what I do differently now is that I get help when I need help, and I ask for help when I need help. And I'm not necessarily talking about, household stuff. Like, yes, I'm better at asking my husband to help with things if I feel overwhelmed. Or yes, I often call my mom to help if I'm having a stressful day or whatever. I'm talking about like investing in yourself and your business. So a really easy example is that I pay an accountant to do all my business taxes. Now, I could struggle through business taxes myself. I absolutely could. I have a degree in business. Like, I could buy a TurboTax, whatever mabob, and do it that way. But really, I could just pay $200 to get someone to do it. And in that time and energy I've spent struggling with this thing, I could have just invested in myself and asked for help and get someone to do it for me. And it was just, there's obviously an extent to this, because I understand that there are financial limitations, and I understand that everyone is in a different place financially, but you have to pick and choose your battles as to, and the fancy word, right? We talk about opportunity cost. Like, what do you give up to get something? And if that $200 that I'm giving up all this time that I could spend doing something else. So really what I'm doing differently now is I'm investing my business strategically. I'm not throwing money at the problem, or I'm trying not to anymore. Because it's also a problem that I've started doing now that I have 3 businesses. But I invest strategically in my business where it makes sense and where it's going to move me forward. Now, here's a really big example, because we talked about the $200 tax example, but for Bytown Academy, the online school for female entrepreneurs I was talking about, we recently switched over to a different, more robust email system. So if you're using email marketing tools right now, it would be the really fancy, super ridiculously expensive equivalent of like a MailChimp. It's like something I wouldn't recommend to anybody really, but it's a really awesome tool for our needs. And because I have a marketing background and because I'm so comfortable with all these tools, it made sense for us. But because it was so fancy and complicated and we invested so much time and money in it, what we decided to do was actually invest $1,500 for a consultant to come in, teach us how to use it, and set it up. And we decided to make this decision when we hadn't even made a penny yet. It was a bit risky. It was a bit scary. But in hindsight, I'm really glad we did it, because if we talk about the opportunity cost of that $1,500. Let's say, for instance, I charge $100 an hour in my marketing consulting business. It's just a nice round number. Will it take me less than $15 to figure out how to do this on my own? So I'm just dividing the 1,500 by 100. So really that's what it's charging me. It's $100 an hour. And quite honestly, no, this system would have taken me probably 50 hours to figure out. That's more than a week's work and more than a week of clients that I could have potentially got. And it would be a huge waste of my time and money. So if you look at it from that perspective, one of the big tips I have for people is to invest in things strategically, because like me, I often try to do things myself. I try to get things done, but I learned really quickly that hacking things out isn't always the best way. It's often best just to find the support of someone who can do it better, because that's what they're there for. And ultimately, it's going to be cheaper for you anyways. So again, I invest strategically in my business. So just to summarize what we talked about, and for those of you just joining us on either Facebook or Instagram, what I've done is I've given you the 6 tips to make more money and to actually work less in your business. And the first one was to spend the time doing the right things. So pick the activities that are most closely tied to revenue and do those first. And if you can't get to the other ones, don't worry about it. It's not the end of the world. Stop trying to achieve perfection. We do not need to have Pinterest perfection. We just need to get things done. It's not going to accomplish or move your business forward at all if it's just sitting on your desk or sitting on your computer. Get things done. Don't worry about perfection. 80-20 rule. Make sure to have open communication with your spouse. This is a huge one. And you don't have to sell to everybody. Sell to your ideal client. Make great friends, which is my fancy way of, and my nicer and softer way of saying network. Oopsie. Oh, I messed that list up, but sorry. And get help when needed. So figure out what makes sense and where it makes sense to strategically invest in your business and go from there. So another way that I would just going to suggest that we can actually help move you forward in your business is with Bytown Academy. We have just launched a free webinar that will be running next Monday and Tuesday. And basically, it's 5 ways to create a $50,000 a year business. And it is open to anybody, so you guys can register for that as well. And we're going to be sorry, I thought this was a bit of order. So what we're going to be talking about on that webinar is we're going to give you the 5 tips to make a $50,000 a year business, but really to create that monetary goal that you've probably been trying to elusively reach for a while, or if you haven't started, maybe didn't think was possible. But trust me, if I can make $40,000 in the first 3 months of my second business with no business experience, you can do $50,000 in a year. And that's big money. To have clients who are happy and like working with you and want to work with you, to make more money, to work less, common trend here, and to do more of what you love and have more freedom. So whether or not that's traveling or decorating the house, I know that, and actually I haven't told anyone this yet, but one of my goals with what I'm going to do with when we launch this course for Bytown Academy is I'm going to redo the carpet in the basement so that I can have a really nice place for my toddler to play when I go on maternity leave, right? These are the freedom to do the things that I want to do. And this webinar, if you sign up for it, it's totally free. And it's just one step further and deeper dive into what we've talked about right now. So what we've talked about today is tips and tricks pertaining to yourself as a momtrepreneur and how you can set that baseline for your business. But this really gives you a deep dive. And the cool thing about it is that you get a different perspective as well, because my business partner, Lana, will be on the call and a little bit heavily involved in that, but she also has a really strong sales background, which is where I admittedly am very weak in my own perceived mind. But so she's going to have her perspective of it as well and run through her personal tips of what has worked in her coaching and consulting practice as well. So all you have to do to register is go to bytownacademy.com/50. Now the spaces are limited because we only have 100 slots available for our webinar package. And I think we have about 70 people signed up already. So if you want to register, it's totally free. There's 2 options, a Monday and a Tuesday option. And you can just go to head to bytownacademy.com/50K, and I'll throw that in a link, clickable link as well. And if you've hung around this long, I really want to thank you guys so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Some of these comments have been very humbling, and I'm just happy to see that. I hope that I can help people in their business, because I found that I went through a lot of challenges and struggles, and if I can avoid that happening to other moms, then that is fantastic. And 2 bonuses I have for you. One is that I've gotten a ton of questions from people, and these are sort of more nitty. See the comments, they're amazing, guys. I'm glad I put on foundation to hide the red. And I put it on with my hands. I didn't even, anyways, not the point. I've gotten a ton of questions, sort of nitty gritty business questions, things like registering your business, HST, just like whatever. What do you suggest for email marketing? I've gotten a bunch of questions like that, and I'm actually going to walk you through them next week. I'm going to do another Facebook Live to answer those, because I thought it was just too much for one. So I'll send out the link for that. So keep an eye out for that. And if you do want a copy of the slides for today, I'm happy to give those to you. All you have to do is head to mombreak.ca/slides, and you'll be able to download your copy there. So one more really quick tip before I close. If you want to hop on that how to build a 50K a year business webinar, where I'm going to be joined with a business coach for Bytown Academy, you can go and register now. Spaces are limited. We have 100. Last I checked, it was 70 people who had already registered. So it's only a few. I say that, a few. There's 30 spots left. Let's be honest. I can do the math. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the questions below. I'm happy to answer them. I love doing stuff like this. I think those of you who have worked with me and we've chatted before really know that I just so badly want people to succeed, because I don't want them to struggle like I did. So thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it, and I will talk to you.